Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the Cyber Gizmo, I'm going to be looking at Fedora Silverblue 36 right after this. Yeah, I mean, Fedora Silverblue released, I think it was Friday, maybe it was Thursday of last week. So today is May the 16th when I am making this video of 2022. So that's what I'll be basing all the information on the images and updates from as of today. Talk about what it is and how it actually is structured. So first of all, it's the same as Fedora Workstation 36. It comes off the same packages, the same operating system, the same build, everything, except one major difference. Fedora Silverblue's root file system is immutable. That means it's read-only. You can't write to it. So anything under root, such as user or anything below user or bin or anything below bin, those are all immutable. You cannot write to them. The var directory, on the other hand, is writable. So is etc, of course. I mean, you would need to be able to make configuration changes no matter what. So var, though, has really become the collection of everything. It's where your mount points are now. It's where your home directories are. It's kind of going back to the kind of the way Sun originally did things, where they kept their user directories under var. This was Sun OS, not Solaris. /home /op, SRB, MNT, temp, they're all symlinked over to var. And you'll see that if you were to do an ls on your root directory, you'll see that everything is symlinked over to var. Silverblue, however, if you're looking to dual boot this solution, they don't support it. So, or manual partitioning, except, there's an exception. You can do manual partitioning if you want to. They don't recommend it. But stay away from the immutable directories. If you push those onto a different partition, you'll probably break Silverblue and it won't be running for you. How the heck is this whole thing put together? So there is a open source software called OSTree. It is the core technology that's used to compose, deploy, and update Silverblue. So everything as far as the outermost operating system, it's all managed by OSTree. OSTree operates like a version control system, except it operates on the file system trees and not on your program code. So there on top of it is a layer called RPM-OSTree. Don't confuse it. It's not the same. RPM-OSTree is used to layer on packages on top of the OSTree image. So I build an OSTree image for Fedora Workstation, let's say, and then I layer on the packages I need in order to build up what I want Silverblue to be. And that's pretty much how it works. So OSTree manages all of that versioning history and all of the images that are needed to collect all that package layering until you get to a final image that you are happy with. Some of the features of OSTree, and this is very different from any other Linux distribution, unless it's based on OSTree, is that you now have transactions. So if you have a failed update with OSTree, it will roll it back. So you don't have to worry about, oh, this library got installed, but that one didn't. So you're in the middle of an update and you've got a mess. So you don't have that problem with OSTree because it only updates the transaction, the atomic part of the transaction when it completes. So yeah, all right. So background image-based upgrades. So it can do these things in the background and it won't be affecting your system. OS rollback without impacting user data. Let's say that you're running along, you installed a package, you're still doing some work, and then you start to go over and use this new package and things blow up. And you go, oh no, what am I going to do? I'll lose my data if I have to roll back. No, you won't lose your data. So you can roll that package back out and your data is fine. It stays current. So your your client-side package layering is all in OSTree features, and you can make your own derivative. So you can start with SilverBlue, and then you could cut it up and make it look like anything you wanted it to be. And there you go. You've got your own personalized version of an operating system and a distribution. OSTree project is independent. It isn't owned by Red Hat. It's not owned by Canonical. It's not owned by Debian. It's totally independent. So OSTree, however, is the underlying update mechanism for a number of entities underneath the banner of Fedora. So you have Fedora Core OS, which is their containerized server. You also have Fedora Kenelite, which is the same as SilverBlue, except it uses KDE instead of GNOME. And then you have Fedora Silverblue, which is based on GNOME. Silverblue gives you 3 ways to install your packages. The first way is through Flatpaks. That is the preferred way to install GUI applications onto the platform. Why? The idea behind, I guess you have to talk about the philosophy of Silverblue in order to understand why they are doing these things and not just allowing you to do things the same old way we always have. What we're trying to do is leave the base operating system alone. First of all, don't provide avenues for updates that can be used to inject malware into the system. Second, protect you from inadvertently installing a package that may not be running very well on this particular platform, and it may cause issues with other applications, particularly if it's changing libraries that they're all dependent upon. And the third thing is it allows you to take on later releases of packages without impacting your existing system. So I can install Flatpaks that are designed for down the road Fedora 38, for example, and it won't impact what I'm doing in SilverBlue 36. That's the whole idea behind it. Second, Toolbox is used to install CLI applications. Those would be used primarily for development, but they could be debugging tools. They might be, you might be running performance analysis. You might be, you might even be doing what I do, which is operate your system that way. So, yeah, you can use your Toolbox. That is a container like Docker. In fact, it uses Podman, which is very much like Docker, and it creates a place where you can, again, install packages, install libraries, experiment, play around, but not have to worry about, oh, this library is going to get installed. How is that going to impact the performance of my base distribution? Well, it's not, because that never gets outside of the toolbox. It stays inside. Third, the RPM OSTree, you can install packages with it. However, they recommend using it for host updates or installing system level applications, services like an Apache runtime, or maybe you have some sort of operating system level utility that you're wanting to install. But in any event, that they really want you to reserve using RPM OSTree for updates. That's their stated direction. It doesn't mean you have to. It just means that's what they would prefer. That way you have a base OS from which, it's easier for them to support, right? So without having all this other garbage in the way that somebody else does and sticks out there. This whole concept of package layering, what the heck is that? So package layering, that basically works by installing a package by, it basically is extending the distribution to host that package. So let's say I have SilverBlue base image 1. Okay, that is my base image that came from Fedora, and I get it, and I do an RPM OSTree install. I don't know. Let's say Git. Let's say I put Git out there, and what's going to happen is it's going to take that old image, move it up, and then it's going to put the package on top. So it's going to save this old environment down here without Git, and it's going to create a new image with Git. Now, it's differential. It's not a complete copy. So when you go to reboot, because your package isn't, you're still active on the bottom one, and you're going to be active on there until you reboot. I don't know of any way to flip. That would be nice if you could flip images in midstream, but I don't think they're quite that sophisticated yet to be able to. I want to stop this kernel, I want to bring up another one and then keep going. So, yeah, that would be tricky. but you do have to reboot. Most, but not all RPM packages supplied by Fedora can be installed in SilverBlue. Some of them just won't support the environment because they require write access into the immutable file systems, for example. Package layering does create a new bootable file, and it will show up in your grub list. But so it won't affect your current root. So every time you run OSTree, it's going to make an entry in your grub. It's going to have your base image, and then the next image up, and then the next image, and it pushes those down. Next image, next image, next image, and you can always. I don't know what the maximum is before it lops off and drops off of that, but yeah, then you can pick and choose what image you want to boot into. So if you're testing a new package, for example, but today I don't want to test the new package, I want to go do work, I don't have to launch that particular image that has the stuff in it that I'm trying to test on the other side. Package layering preserves rollback and the transactional model. So again, if your package fails to install, it won't complete, it'll roll back automatically. So package layering does mean, we talked about that, you have to reboot when updating or installing new packages. So there's a couple of experimental features for live updates. Now, this slide was from 35, from November. I didn't see whether or not this has had any updates or not in 36. Normally, the Fedora Silverblue team, if they have done like they've made some major changes to something in these areas, they would call it out. But I didn't see anything called out in about that. So I'm assuming these are still experimental. So RPM OSTree apply live, which live update. So there you go. It's gonna, if I have a change in the kernel, it's gonna try to update live. You switches deployment to a new root without reboot. So those are experimental features. Yeah, try at your own risk. Not for prime time, right? Not for prime time. That's the core of SilverBlue. We got through it all. I guess at the end I'll summarize all this for you. But what are their minimum requirements? Well, it's a little bit more than Fedora Workstation because you got a lot more going on here, right? I mean, you've got Flatpaks, and you've got Toolbox, and you've got Podman, and you've got the OSTree. So you'll need a dual core 2 gigahertz or better for a CPU. You're also going to need about 2 gig of memory, probably 4. You're going to need 20 gig of disk space, and you're going to need a monitor if you're using using this for a desktop for a 1024 by 768 or better. Recommended, however, is a 2 gigahertz quad core, and 4 gig of memory. However, I would say 8. Again, I saw thrashing using 4 gig. Just going through the install process, I saw thrashing. So I know that anything I do is just going to make that worse. 20 gig of disk space, and again, 1024 by 768 for your screen resolution. These are the same. If you watch the video on the Fedora 36 workstation, so these are the same, but I'll go over them again in case you haven't seen that video. If you have seen it, just skip this part, skip this chapter. It supports recursive ID map mounts, which allows me then to have different permissions based on a mount point. So before we had to go down and mess with chounds, and it got complicated, especially you had a lot of different things you wanted different groups of people to perform on that particular mount, and it just yuck. So yeah, so you can say this mount point does this. The other one is the Berkeley Packet Filter, or BPF. It is a compile once, run everywhere now, so you can make your changes on a different machine, bring them over to this one, and they'll work. So you don't have to recompile them. New AMDP state driver, talked about this before. They're now using the CPPC instead of the older ACPI. And as I understand it, it also has finer grained adjustments for the frequency than ACPI supports. So it just gets you a little closer, to being able to get the maximum performance out of that machine, out of that, I guess, as Jay's 2 cents likes to say, the silicon lottery. So as you get the more you can get out of that ship, then you can increment up just as close as you can until it doesn't boot, and then back it down again, right? So the other one is the random number generator improvement. SHA-1's been replaced by Blake's 2. That's been a long time needed because SHA-1 has been broke, and I mean broken security-wise, since 2014, probably a year or two earlier than that, in fact. But yeah, I mean, if you're using SHA-1, it's going to be pretty easy for someone to decrypt that message. So yeah, I'd be changing that to something else other than SHA-1. Network file system cache system has been rewritten. So again, talked about this. I think that's more to just tidy up things, simplify things. There's nothing new in there that they did. It's more of I'm just trying, I guess, to make the code more readable. 2, maybe simplify some of the coding logic and streamline it a little bit so it isn't working quite as hard. Other one is we've got another problem with Spectre Meltdown, and this one affects ARM, I believe, and this mitigating straight line speculation attacks, although Intel, AMD are affected as well. So I would expect that the 5.17 kernel, you're probably going to notice some degradation in performance, because every time you mitigate something like that, yeah, it's a trade-off between what you were doing that was high speed, and now you can't do that anymore. So also 5.17 supports the latest ARM chips. So I guess it's good news if you have the latest ARM hardware from somewhere. If you have a Raspberry Pi, I don't think you have to worry about it. So yeah. So what are some of the changes that you can expect to see? What makes SilverBlue 36 different? So they're talking about, these are the actual specific things that you can map to a different partition. So boot, var home, var log, var containers, and even the outermost root level can be remapped. If you remap anything else during the install process, it'll let you, but it won't work. So they don't do error checking on it. So yeah, I assume they're probably just getting the same code from the Workstation team, and they haven't put anything in it to make it unique to SilverBlue. So now you've been warned. Yeah. So some of the other enhancements that now on their list, they say GNOME 42. I'm saying no, it's a sorta, and you'll see why when we look at the the walkthrough. So yeah, in the GNU chain, the tool chain starts with GCC 12, glib 2.35, and it goes on up. Almost everything, all the languages have been updated. So also for new installs of this, you'll find var is on its own subvolume. And of course, SilverBlue does use ButterFS as its host, as the root base file system. Also, OpenSSL upgraded to version 3. That's the same as Fedora Workstation. This one, however, is different. GDM sessions will run on Wayland by default when using an NVIDIA driver. I would also caution you, if you are going to install an NVIDIA native driver onto SilverBlue, make sure you go read their FAQ, because yeah, if you miss a step here, yeah, you're going to have a mess. It ain't going to work. So yeah, go pay attention to that. There's 3 things that you need to do, only 2 of which you have to do. So Podman is upgraded to 4.0, and Podman is a replacement for Docker. It is command for command compatible. It allows you to use Docker containers. The only difference between it is, the reason why there's Podman is because Docker has been dragging its feet on implementing some of the changes that Red Hat wants for their enterprise-based servers. So yeah, they want to go to the later security models and naming spaces. Docker, I think, finally did that, but it was too late. They had already started on their own work for Podman. So there's also Cockpit. This is also the same as Fedora. It adds file sharing item support for SMB and NFS. So you now have options in there that you can modify and configure your settings for SMB or NFS file shares. Podman 4 was made available in Fedora Workstation. It has always been available in SilverBlue, but now it's upgraded to Podman 40. So yeah, it was 30, I think, before. So the Stratus file system, which of course is of interest to me, probably not to you. This is Red Hat's copy on write file system that they are building, and it is now in its 3rd generation, and it offers many improvements and bug fixes. Is it production ready? No. Let me get started here, and we'll walk through an install. I'll show you a few things, and then we'll come back and we'll do kind of the final thoughts. I have a template set up that, well, it's actually just a skeleton set up for the virtual machine on Proxmox, and this will hold SilverBlue 36. And you can see from the hardware, if I bring it up here, that I'm using 8 gig of memory, 4 cores, and I am using Spice as my driver, and 32 gig for the amount of disk space. And that's basically it. That's basically it. So I'm just going to go ahead and start this, and then we'll turn the console on. You can do it either way. Turn the console on and then do it, but it's going to. So this isn't a live CD, so it actually is the installation CD. Like always, it's going to ask me for what language to use. I'm going to take the defaults. Those are fine. I have English US that's figured out where I am at, and then the installation path. So one thing to talk about here, I guess, is that if you're doing custom, that is, you're gonna create your own storage pools. And one of the slides that I had earlier talked about which particular directories you can actually change or put in their own partitions. Now, I don't think I think that it's still true that this doesn't check, but you'll have a system that won't work if you don't follow the rules. So make sure you understand what partitions you can create that are off of the default and which ones you cannot. So yeah, remember, this is an immutable file system, and so yeah, you could have some problems. But anyway, we're just going to take the default, and then we're going to start the installation here. Okay, it's done. That took about 4.5 minutes or so to install. And I'll go ahead and reboot this. Should come up with a setup screen. Yeah, here we go. And we can turn off that. I do want those. Do want the third-party repos. And skip that, and then I need to create a sign-on for myself. Oops. That was actually correct. So one thing I will tell you, that this user that you're setting up here will become your admin account. And root is automatically disabled. So in the past, you had to go do that yourself. Yeah, I've shown this before. It's pretty basic. I don't think I need to do that again. So here we are at the activity menu, and we can select which workspace we want to be in. At this point, I think probably the first thing to do is, one of the things I ran into with this was when I went to the software store. So you don't have to enable the FlatHub anymore. Flatpaks are automatically enabled, and this is what this is doing right now. I've got 7 updates to do, so we'll do this. This will probably take some time too, and I will be back when this is done. Let's take a look. Oops, let's go to the store. And we're downloading the catalog again. Okay. Looks like they have fixed a bug that was in here. I was getting an error after I had performed the updates that the system was now unsupported. So, but that seems to have been fixed. While we're in here, let's take a look at what we have. So let's look at the work area, the work section, and let's just pick Bitwarden here. And the default is FlatHub for this one, of course. Let's let me just drop into a terminal here to show you a few things that are going on. So let me make this big enough so that you can see, and me as well. All right, so the first thing we want to know is, now I have run a few things. I have not installed very much yet though. So where is our root? Where is root actually stored? So root is actually right here. So 5.7 gig is what the current occupation of the disk is. And then you'll notice some new things here. You'll notice that if I do ls on the root level directory, you will notice, well, there is a home there, but you'll see it's linked. You can see all the linkages this way. So our home folders are now linked to var home. Our lib is redirected to user lib, same with lib64, same with media. Our mounts are now coming off of var. Our OPT directory is in var, and even the root has been moved to var. So yeah, everything out here is immutable. So everything in there is, you can write to it and so forth. So the first thing that that they recommend is that we now have a container layer called Toolbox. Toolbox is actually fitted into Podman, and Podman is, as I talked about before, Podman is the replacement for Docker, and Fedora is going that because Docker has been unwilling to make some mandatory changes that the Linux distributions need in order to move this out into an enterprise environment. So yeah, so now we have Podman. Podman, as I said under the review for Fedora Workstation, is command for command compatible with Docker. The only difference is that this has the constructs that they want in order to be able to support the future of containers going forward. You can bring down Docker containers and you can install them with Podman. They will work. I haven't tested every single one of them, but I have tested enough to know that they do work. So the other thing is that you now have Toolbox. And Toolbox allows you to create your own container in your home directory, and then you share your home directory with that container. So any changes you make in the container are reflected in your home directory outside the container. Any changes you make to your home folder are reflected inside the container. As soon as you make those changes, so they keep them in sync. So how do I create a Toolbox? So you do a create, and then you will notice. Okay, I'll do a /help. Or tac help, I should say, so that you can use other distributions in this container if you wish. The default, of course, is going to be to put SilverBlue inside of this, but it's actually the Fedora Workstation that's actually going to get installed in here. So let's just, you can go through this. If you have the image and you want to install it, you can do that. But the default is to install one for Fedora 36. So you can also specify an earlier release of this. So if your development project requires you to release this on 35, for example, that's fine. You can do that. So we'll go ahead and do a Toolbox create, and we'll leave it default, and that should give us a Fedora 36 Toolbox. Okay, and we'll just wait till it's done. And then, as it says here, when you want to enter that, you just type in toolbox enter, and you will notice we get this little purple circle in front of our shell prompt. So as you can see, I am seeing my home folder. So inside the container, if I create you'll see that it's in my directory. We'll exit, and you'll also see it's out here. So yeah, I can use my toolbox to make changes to the system. They also recommend that, you know, if you're installing packages that you need, then you should do them here through the DNF install command. So if I want to install Git and Glances and HTOP and NeoFetch, I'm going to find out. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oops. Now I lost it. Let's try this. So these packages do not get installed on the main system. I should be able to run HTOP here. Okay, as you can see, it's not there. Now that may have already been installed. That's not there. That's not there. So, all right, let me go ahead and close that down. So anything you install in your container it allows me to make sure that for a couple of things. One is I could install different versions of packages than I would have in the main system, and that this would prevent me from polluting the installed system. And vice versa, if I have been running and I have been developing in the main system, and this would be normally if somebody installs a new package that has a library that replaces one of the ones I'm using, I could have application problems because of incompatibilities between the libraries. Again, if I'm inside of the toolbox, I don't have that problem. My environment is protected from the system, any system changes that are made, and vice versa. Anything I make in changes inside of the toolbox don't impact the system build. So yeah, so I should be able to run Glances, and I should be able to run NeoFetch inside of here. So yeah, everything seems to work just fine. So that is the way it works. Also, if the way they recommend that you look for packages to install on the immutable side, well, we're going to do that, but we're going to install a package on the immutable side, and then I will show you how, because there is no search in RPM OSTree. There's no search in there. I don't know why they don't include it, but they don't. So if I was looking for Python, or maybe let's look for PHP CLI. Yeah, so this is how I would search for the package name, and yeah, it is PHP CLI. So once I exit out here, RPM OSTree has a number of commands that it understands. So some of the things you can do is we can do a status. Let's do that. I still have, I have my update now, and this is my older one down here. So my original one is right here that I installed with. This one up here is the update that I just did from inside of the store. So yeah, if I want to do let's say we want to do, I have to be suited, RPM OSTree. Let's say we want to install Glances out here. So now it's telling me to reboot. So now if I try to run glances, it's going to say not found because this is immutable, and the only time that the system gets updated is during a reboot. So it doesn't know about any changes to the system because I'm still running on the older image. So you can think of this as when I did the install of glances, I created a new image, I installed it in it, but I remained running on the old image. So when I reboot, it's now going to boot me into the new image that I just created with glances, but through the installation of glances. And now glances should be a part of the system. Hopefully it'll make sense once I show you. So let's see. Let's do the status. Okay, so there's my new system and it says layered packages are glances. So these packages get layered on top. This is the previous one that had the update in it. Or I could just stay here. Now glances, when I run it this time, because I am in the image that contains the layered package, I'm good to go. It's going to run. Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. As far as the system itself is concerned, we basically have, one thing I wanted to check here. Yeah, so when I was running this earlier, I went in here into my activities and I selected settings, went to appearance, selected dark, and I started running on this for a while, and then let's say I wanted, let's do this. Let's say I want calculator. So I went to launch calculator and I get hit in the face with this white background. I was like, wait a minute, why isn't this picking up this? And so I went to look at the about and noticed that it was running under 41.1. So it should be 42. This is not native, and where it's pulling this from is a Flatpak. I don't know the reason why they did this. Apparently, they did not finish. I mean, that's pretty obvious. I mean, I would say that, we have some. This one right here, I'm not too worried about the platform being 35 being mixed in here. That happens. Not all packages, because Fedora doesn't control all the people that do the packages, so they may not have updated their packages to support 36 yet. Also, all of these are version 41. I'm not sure why this has happened, but my guess is they did not have time to complete the work based on the schedule. Now, you have to remember that they're receiving Fedora's feed, and so Fedora finished theirs on the workstation. They're running 100% on 42, but this one is not. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on here. So just be aware of that, that some of the more common ones, a lot of them, in fact, a lot of the applications are actually version 41, like calculator, calendar, characters, connections, contexts, events, extensions, logs, maps, sushi. They're all 41. And in fact, some of those are even backdated further. Now, I saw this also in Ubuntu, where some of these were backdated into version 3.34, or even earlier. But yeah, so just be aware of that. I'm not crazy about that idea. I don't like mixing versions, but this is an immutable release, so it's not likely that I would be able to pollute this further, but I could. Yeah, so anyway. The other thing is that as far as other changes, these operate exactly the same way as the Fedora Workstation 35. So you have your light and dark backgrounds for the windows, and then you have all of the same settings for like displays and so forth. Now, this is going to be interesting. Let me see what happens. This is Spice, and Spice is dynamic. Oh yeah, it picked it up. So good, that's working. Good. Yeah, the about is saying it's 42. I am running under Wayland, and yeah, that's where I'll end it for now. Let's go talk about some final thoughts. After, as you saw in the install, yeah, there's a few problems. It's not perfect, but hey, you show me a distribution that is, and I'll show you one that doesn't exist. So what problems does SilverBlue solve for us? So I guess the first thing is, most of us want to just take a distribution. We want to build it up the way we want it. We don't want to have a whole lot of fluff in the middle of it and a bunch of stuff that we have to get rid of and junk, and then have problems with linkages and libraries and things that break in the night. So the desires of the SilverBlue team is to keep the main OS as small and as lean as possible. They prefer that you would install your GUIs via Flatpaks in order to keep that mess out of the realm of the main OS. They also allows you to get access to the latest builds, and of course you also get that comes free. What comes free with that is you also get access to the latest bugs. So yeah, you can you have the toolbox, which allows you to install CLI or client-based command line applications. Sort of libraries and configuration, or maybe you're experimenting around with different packages, like I was the other day with playing around with SPT, so SRT I should say. It's a streaming protocol that replaces the one that YouTube uses. Although I don't know when YouTube will ever, if they will ever go to SRT, don't know. But yeah, so the idea behind the toolbox is that you can do what you want without impacting the libraries on the main OS, potentially hosing your installation. I don't know how many times I've done that. And if you're a developer, I'm sure you have too. Even inadvertently, it's not hard to do it. Every library has its own tree, and yeah, one of those is going to trigger a failure. It's like playing Russian roulette with 5 bullets in the chamber. It's not a question of if; it's a question of when. So, what are the problems does it solve? It allows you to have a mixed application library version mismatch with operating within the system and being controlled so that you can do that. That is mainly to allow you to try out latest versions of the application without potentially harming what's going on your base operating system. It has containerized development, and now the advantage there is I can have multiple projects going on at the same time that have different version requirements. There's also the containerized GUI applications via Flatpak. Same thing. I can bring in older ones, I can bring in newer ones without, again, impacting what the system is doing. Now, will that always install? Sometimes you might run into an issue with that. I have run into Flatpaks that have failed to install before. Also, you just want to keep the base OS lean and mean. You just want to keep it so that it runs as quick as it can without having a bunch of fluff it has to wade through. I'm going to leave you tonight with the benchmarks, but before we do that, I want to thank y'all for listening to this today. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, please like and subscribe. And hope to see you all in the next video. And please enjoy what the benchmarks are. Again, I've explained these before. They also have text on the screen that will explain what each one does. Enjoy them. Hope to see you again real soon, and bye for now.